So these upgrades might not make you faster, but if you're in your 40s, 50s and beyond, well, they'll definitely make you want to ride longer. Good morning, and once again you find me out on a beautifully sunny Sunday morning as I gaze upon the very early spring shootings of an oilseed rape field. This is beautiful. As James has just pointed out though, give it another month or so and my hay fever is going to hate this place. But until then, we are on an absolutely beautiful gravel ride again this weekend. And given how difficult I found last weekend and how much of a backache I had after it, although don't get me wrong, I still absolutely loved it, but I thought it'd be pertinent this week to talk about some upgrades on a bike as us older gentlemen want to enjoy a little bit more time on the bike in a little bit more comfort. So here are my 8 road and gravel bike upgrades that help you ride for longer in your 40s, 50s and beyond. And the first upgrade is tyre width. Now, if you're riding gravel, then your tyre width is probably going to be a lot wider than it would be on a road bike anyway. But the wider you can go on any bike, the better and the more comfortable. Certainly on a road bike, even moving from 25mm up to 28, but ideally something like a 30 or 32mm will give you far more comfort on the bike because it means you can run much lower pressures on the wheels, therefore giving you a bit more cushioning. Thankfully, a lot of road bikes these days are giving much more clearance on both the fork and the rear triangle to allow you to put wider tyres in. As manufacturers start to realise that people want to use their bikes for dual purposes, either road, gravel, bit of endurance or anything like that. So it's nice that they're taking those things into consideration, which helps certainly on the road side of things. Even if you're not going to take your bike off road, again, it does allow you to put some wider tyres on. So widen those tyres, put less pressure in them, and you'll definitely enjoy your ride more. Leading on from tyre width is what you put inside the tyres as well, because my second tip is running tubeless, which is something that I'm still yet to play with, but watch this space in the next couple of weeks in the run up to the Dirty Reaver. I'm hoping that eventually I will set these tyres up as tubeless, but that aside, the reason for it is, again, you can run much lower pressures on tubeless tyres, which again means more comfort. But more important than that is the fact that you'll have far less punctures on a cold, windy, wet roadside to deal with, meaning less bending over, less time squatting down, less time on your knees, generally less time bent over, giving yourself a bad back, trying to fix a puncture, which equals more enjoyable riding. Now, yes, I know there is a bit of extra faff with tubeless tyres and running tubeless and having to change the sealer every 6 months or so, and then having to retop it up if you do get a puncture, which invariably you will at some point. But that can generally be done in the comfort of your own home, where it's nice and warm with a cup of tea. And if you're really lucky, probably a little biscuit as well. My next upgrade tip is something that your knees would definitely thank you for, because it's a much wider gearing at the back. Now, as cyclists, our leg strength is probably slightly better than the average population, but still we do suffer from knee problems, which becomes a real problem as we try to push our bikes ever more uphill. So having a cassette bigger than your standard 32 tooth at the back, or maybe even 34, I think is what most rear derailleurs, or what most road rear derailleurs can take anyway. But something bigger than that would definitely help you climbing those hills quicker, climbing those hills more smoothly. He says, as he's in completely the wrong gear, we're coming uphill. I blame making a video. Right, let's get to the top and I'll carry on. Now, changing your cassette at the back to something bigger than the standard 34 tooth may require a change of derailleur as well, because as I say, most rear derailleurs for road bikes will only take you up to 34 teeth, but there are now a multitude of options, such as the L2 GR9 gravel rear derailleur that I put on my friend Jimmy's bike after the R9 road version I put on there spontaneously combusted on a gravel ride back last year. Now, I can't remember the exact amount of teeth that will allow you to put on a cassette, but it is something ridiculous like 46 or 50, possibly even 52 teeth. But what I do know is the cassette that I put on Jimmy's bike is an absolute dinner plate, to the point now where we're going to be taking his 2x crank off at the front and replacing it with a 1x. Such is the range of gears that he's got, he doesn't even need the double chainring at the front. So bigger cassette on the back, widen that gear range, and you'll find it much easier to climb hills. And more importantly, your knees will find it easier going up hills. And as I finish that last tip, it's perfect timing because another thing that will help you ride for much longer. Why am I in this divot and not on the grass? Oh, hang on a sec. Yeah, so another thing that will help you riding for much longer is a cafe stop to keep warm, have a nice cup of tea, and maybe a little bit of cake. So let's do that now. Right, lovely hot cup of tea and a piece of Victoria sponge done. So, back on with the tips. And while we've talked about keeping your knees happy, the next tip will very much keep your cherished backside happy because it's a suspension seat post. Now, I was very much hoping my good friend Jimmy was going to come out on this ride today because he has a suspension seat post on his bike, which I was going to show you, but instead, I'll just cut a little bit of B-roll in of an old bike of mine, which had one. However, I have been threatening to put a suspension seat post on this bike since the Dirty Reaver last year, which was April last year. I just simply haven't got around to it, unfortunately. But I would definitely be putting it in before the Dirty Reaver this year because that ride is an absolute beast on the backside. And while a suspension seat post only has about, I think, 30 to 40 millimeters of travel in it, it's not a huge amount, but it's enough to take the big sting out of the big potholes. And it's one of those things that you don't know you needed until you've actually tried it, and it feels absolutely incredible. While we're talking about suspension, this wasn't officially one of my tips, but on the same note is a suspension stem as well, which my friend James has got on his gravel bike at the moment, but he's far too far ahead of me at the minute. Now, for both of those items, you can go for the more premium end of the market, or you can go budget. James certainly has the Redshift Sports suspension stem, and they also do a suspension seat post as well. The one that I put onto my buddy Jimmy's gravel bike is one of the AliExpress models, which cost about 17 quid, and the suspension stem from AliExpress, while a little bit heavier than the Redshift Sports version, and arguably not as good looking, but it is much, much cheaper at only about 35 or 40 quid. The suspension stem especially is very good for taking the buzz out of those lumpy and bumpy rides, which can often leave your palms feeling a little bit numb for a few days after your ride. So yeah, suspension seat post, suspension stem, be kind to your backside and wrists. So we've spoken about keeping your knees, backside and wrists happy, but what about your lower back? I've certainly found that that is an issue as I've got into my mid-40s. Well, don't fear, because my next tip is an adjustable stem, or simply just adding a few spacers under your bars. Now, I've certainly been out on rides before that are 3-4 hours long. Thankfully, this doesn't happen on my gravel bike because it has a little bit more of a relaxed geometry, but certainly on my road bike, which is far more aero and aggressive, I do feel like one of those cooked prawns after a few hours in the saddle, and that is no good for anyone's back. Now, putting a few extra spacers under your handlebars is arguably going to be a lot more work than putting an adjustable stem on, because it does mean that you're going to need enough steerer to be able to lift your handlebars up and put those spacers in. So it might mean putting a completely new fork on. There are extender pieces that you can buy that will make your steerer a lot taller, but to be honest, I would steer clear of those because, yeah, I'm always a little bit wary of just how safe they are. So an adjustable stem that will allow you to lift your handlebars up and down as you see fit, yeah, that's much easier to fit to your bike. Talking of reducing the buzz through your handlebars, another tip for your wrists is to use a thicker bar tape, or even to double wrap your bars. Or if you're using flat bars, putting some more ergonomic grips on. With the double or thicker bar tape, that's going to give much more comfort and cushioning, and with the ergonomic grips on a flat bar, that will give much more of a platform for your wrists as well, which again will keep them much more comfortable. And I say on a flat bar, actually now you can buy ergonomic tops for your drop handlebars as well. So if you don't have one of those flat aero handlebars like I do on my gravel bike here, it does allow you to have that wider platform, as I mentioned, to give more comfort for the wrists and palms. So now we've discussed knees, backside and wrists. The last body part that we're going to look to protect and give a bit more comfort to comes straight from the Pro Peloton, would you believe? Because it's using much shorter cranks. However, while the Pro Peloton are using them to be able to get into a much more aero position on the bike. My suggestion, as with all of these tips, is for much more comfort, because naturally, as we get older, the hips and hip flexors do get a little bit more creaky, and the range of movement that we have in them does decrease quite a bit. Having shorter cranks then does mean that at the top of the pedal stroke, your knee doesn't need to come up anywhere near as far, meaning your hip isn't as super flexed as it might be on a longer crank. If you're looking at a shorter crank, then you're probably looking at something like a 165 or even a 160 if your hips are particularly bad. Now, yes, I know there will be people in the comments that say, well, if you're shortening the cranks, that means you're having to put much more pressure down through the pedals, which means more problems for the knees. But if you employ shorter cranks with a much bigger cassette at the back, well, then you cover both those bases. My final tip is probably more of an autumn, winter, early spring one, but it's definitely something that will encroach into the summer as well, and it's having the right kit. Because certainly in the autumn, winter and early spring like today, keeping yourself warm on the bike is paramount. And even, as I say, on these early spring rides like today, it started off at 0 degrees this morning and it is now a balmy 6. So having a good merino wool jersey like this one that I got from Blackmore, and a decent buff to keep your neck warm and a hat to keep your head warm, especially when, like me, you're follically challenged. But as I say, even during the summer, having a decent pair of bib shorts with a nice comfortable chamois in them can make all the difference on a long ride. I've been using Blackmore kit for about 1.5 years, 2 years now, and I have to say, it is unbelievably comfortable. When I started using these long sleeve merino wool jerseys, I did, on the first occasion, put another long sleeve jersey under it because they are very thin, and I thought, this ain't gonna keep me warm on a very cold ride. I very quickly found out I was wrong, and that long sleeve jersey underneath had to come off as I was overheating. I've worn this long sleeve merino wool jersey a number of times on even sub-zero rides, and it's definitely kept me warm enough. Aside from that though, as I say, the chamois is very comfortable, and I've worn it on some super long rides, including Cardiff to London back last year, where it did me an absolute treat. The other bonus you get with supporting a company like Blackmore is that they are a local British business, and they're based out not far from me, out on the wilds of Chelmsford in Essex. So not only do you get great kit at a great price, you also get a warm, bubbly feeling inside that you're supporting a great British business. And while I'm not paid to say this in any way, either financially or in free kit, I do just think it is great kit. And it's fair to say I have become good friends with the owner, Nick, since doing a video with him a couple of years ago. I'll leave a link to that up here somewhere if you've not seen that. But Nick has given me a discount code to use on the website, which I'll leave in the video description below. So there you go, there are my 8-ish tips of how to keep yourself comfortable and riding for longer on your bike when you get into your mature era. But as ever, I'm always keen to hear your thoughts. Have you guys got any tips or tricks that you employ to keep yourself more comfortable on the bike and make sure that you can keep pushing yourself out for longer, enjoying rides into your much later years? Sound off in the comments below. Always great to hear your comments. But otherwise, as ever, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Ride safe and ride comfortable. Take care, guys. See you later. I'm very much reminded of comfort as I come up this very gnarly, knobbly hill. Yeah, comfort is definitely the name of the game when you're over 40.